Hit subscribe, smash that like, and comment if you think you could survive the system. The body was discovered just after 4:32 a.m. when the first shift of kitchen staff at FCI Edgewater began preparing breakfast. Inmate Luis Calderon lay slumped over the stainless steel counter, a tray of untouched eggs and grits spilled beside him. His face was pale, sweat gleaming on his forehead under the harsh fluorescent lights, eyes wide open as if frozen in terror. At first, the guard on duty assumed it was another drug-related incident. But Calderon wasn't a user. His medical record was clean. He wasn't part of a gang. He was a model inmate, assigned to kitchen duty for his background as a line cook before his conviction for fraud. Lieutenant Sandra Rhodes of the Federal Investigative Unit arrived within minutes. Her boots clicked against the tile floor, echoing in the cavernous kitchen. The smell of boiled eggs mixed with bleach hung in the air. Rhodes crouched beside the body, noting a small sealed cup on Calderon's tray. She picked it up carefully with gloves. It contained a pale gray paste, faintly glistening under the lights. "This isn't standard," she muttered. The kitchen staff avoided her eyes. Dennis Harlow, the head food administrator, wiped a hand across his brow. "All trays follow strict federal menus. Nothing like this is approved." Rhodes didn't believe him. She ordered the area sealed. Cameras were checked. The morning shift was held in the hall under supervision while forensic teams combed the kitchen. The early reports were confusing. Toxicology tests on Calderon's bloodstream revealed traces of a compound not listed in the facility's inventory, an experimental appetite suppressant mixed with a mild sedative. Not lethal alone. But Calderon had a heart condition that had never been flagged in his file. The mixture had triggered a cardiac arrest. Rhodes studied the sealed cup. The compound had been delivered in concentrated form. Someone had prepared it deliberately. Someone inside the prison. She began reviewing security footage. Calderon had accessed storage room D at 4:05 a.m., far earlier than his scheduled duty. The logs showed the door opening for exactly 3 minutes. Then a figure appeared, Dennis Harlow, carrying a small insulated container. He left the room minutes later, walking toward the kitchen. No staff member should have been there at that hour. Rhodes called in investigative journalist Aaron Keller, a man who had spent years uncovering corruption inside private and federal institutions. Keller reviewed the footage, his brow furrowing. "This isn't an isolated incident," he said. 2 months ago, at FCI Clearwater, another inmate collapsed in the kitchen under nearly identical circumstances. And in Indiana, the same pattern: kitchen staff, early morning access, unexplained compounds. Rhodes leaned over the digital manifests Keller had obtained. "Who authorized these shipments?" "They're labeled as part of the Nutritional Compliance Initiative," Keller replied. "But the program is subcontracted to a private company. They call it behavioral diet optimization. The contracts are buried under larger food service agreements." Rhodes' stomach tightened. Across multiple states, federal prisons were experimenting with inmate meals. A subtle chemical manipulation to stabilize mood and reduce aggression. And Calderon had stumbled across the wrong tray at the wrong time. The investigation turned inward. Rhodes requested ingredient logs and shipping manifests. Pages were missing. Surveillance tapes were incomplete or corrupted. Each missing file suggested a deliberate attempt to hide evidence. The morning after Calderon's death, Rhodes confronted Harlow directly in the kitchen. "You prepared these compounds," she said, stepping into the fluorescent glare. Harlow's expression remained calm. "I follow approved protocols," he said. "Everything is documented." Rhodes held up the sealed cup. "This. Explain this." "I have no idea," Harlow muttered, but his eyes flickered. Just enough. It was a reaction she recognized: guilt, fear, or calculation. She couldn't tell which. By noon, Rhodes had secured a hard drive from Harlow's office. Inside were spreadsheets detailing meals, compounds, and delivery schedules. She scanned the entries: FCI Edgewater, Clearwater, Terre Haute, Lompoc. Same compounds. Same timing. Same controlled administration. Her phone buzzed. An anonymous tip. "Phase 2 is in motion. Stop digging or the consequences will accelerate. The message chilled her. The program wasn't just experimental, it was systemic, sanctioned at levels far above a single administrator. That evening, she reviewed footage of the tray preparation. Another staff member entered storage room D, pulled a container from a back shelf, and carefully measured the gray paste onto individual meal trays. They worked efficiently, without hesitation, as if this was routine. And then she noticed something in the footage that made her blood run cold. The signature on the delivery manifest wasn't Harlow's. It was that of the Assistant Director of Federal Operations, the same official who approved the Nutritional Compliance Initiative contracts nationwide. This wasn't rogue. This wasn't an accident. This was policy. Rhodes felt the walls of her office close in as she read the manifest for the 10th time. Calderon hadn't just died by chance. He had discovered a menu the system wanted hidden. A menu that controlled, subdued, and manipulated inmates under the guise of nutrition. Her phone rang. A known number. She answered cautiously. Lieutenant Rhodes, a calm, clipped voice said, "You are meddling in affairs above your clearance. Step back or you will regret it." No further trace. Rhodes sat in silence. The office lights flickered as the sun set behind the razor wire. Outside, the prison remained quiet. Inmates moved through their evening routines, unaware that some meals were now instruments of compliance. On her desk, the manifest glowed in the faint lamplight. She scrolled down to the bottom, where one line made her stomach knot. Phase 2 implementation pending, full compliance review. Phase 2. She didn't know the full scope. But if Calderon had died during the first stage, she feared what would come next. She stared at the sealed cups, the spreadsheets, the corrupted footage, and the chilling directives. Somewhere in another facility, another tray was being prepared, another life hanging in the balance. And Rhodes knew the secret menu wasn't a rumor. It was a tool of control. And its reach was only beginning. The phone buzzed again. Another anonymous email. This time, it contained a single PDF labeled Tier 3 Facilities Behavioral Supplement Protocol. Her eyes scanned the first page. Her pulse quickened. Names of facilities, shipment dates, chemical concentrations, staff authorizations. Then she saw the second page, a notation for selective personnel access. She swallowed hard. This wasn't random. This wasn't simply oversight. Someone had planned this. Carefully. Strategically. And she realized, with sudden clarity, that the full scale of the program was far greater than she had imagined. The last line of the PDF made her gasp. Phase 2 operations are authorized nationwide. Begin integration immediately. Rhodes leaned back in her chair. Every instinct screamed at her that the danger wasn't just inside Edgewater, it was systemic. And it was coming for anyone who knew too much. She closed the file slowly, staring out at the dimly lit courtyard, watching the guards making their rounds. If Phase 2 had begun, the real horror was yet to come. And somewhere in the network of federal kitchens and commissary deliveries, the trays kept moving, the compounds being measured, the silent control continuing. It wasn't just food. It was a weapon. And she was running out of time. The first sign that Phase 2 had already begun didn't come from a document. It came from another body. 3 states away, inside a federal correctional complex in Oklahoma, inmate Darren Pike collapsed during evening chow. Witnesses said he dropped mid-sentence, his tray clattering across the concrete floor. Guards initially reported dehydration. By midnight, he was in a coma. Lieutenant Sandra Rhodes received the call at 2:14 a.m. Same symptoms? She asked. Identical, the voice on the other end replied. Sudden cardiac instability. No contraband. Kitchen assignment. Rhodes stared at the PDF on her desk, the one labeled Tier 3 Facilities, Behavioral Supplement Protocol. Oklahoma was listed. Shipment date, 3 days prior. Phase 2 wasn't pending. It was active. By sunrise, Rhodes was on a secured federal flight heading west. Across the aisle sat Aaron Keller, laptop open, eyes bloodshot from a night of digging through procurement records. I pulled federal spending reports, Keller said quietly. The Nutritional Compliance Initiative expanded funding last quarter. Quietly, it doubled. Under what justification? Rhodes asked. Inmate behavioral stabilization and cost reduction. That's the official language. Rhodes knew what that meant. Fewer altercations. Fewer lockdowns. Lower staffing costs. A calmer prison population meant fewer headlines, fewer lawsuits. Control disguised as nutrition. When they arrived at the Oklahoma facility, the air felt heavier. The warden greeted them stiffly, his smile stretched too tight. Lieutenant Rhodes, we were told you might be coming. But I assure you, Mr. Pike's condition is being handled. I'm not here for reassurances, Rhodes replied. I'm here for your kitchen. The storage room smelled faintly metallic. Shelves stacked with sealed containers, protein substitutes, powdered mixes. Everything labeled, everything logged. Too perfect. Rhodes walked slowly along the back wall until she found it, a locked refrigeration unit separate from the main food supply. Smaller. Discreet. Open it. The warden hesitated. Just a second. Then he signaled a guard. Inside were dozens of small, identical cups filled with gray paste. The same paste found on Luis Calderon's tray. Keller photographed everything. Batch numbers. Shipping labels. Manufacturer codes. But one detail stood out. The supplier listed wasn't a food distributor. It was a biomedical research company based in Maryland. Rhodes turned to the warden. Who authorized this? He swallowed. The directive came from regional administration. We were told participation was mandatory. Did you inform inmates? He looked away. Of course they hadn't. The next break in the case came from a nurse. Her name was Emily Carver. She requested to speak privately, hands trembling as she closed the office door behind her. They told us it was a vitamin fortifier, she said. But I started noticing patterns. Blood pressure drops. Slower reflexes. Emotional flattening. Fewer complaints. Fewer fights. And Pike? Rhodes asked. He refused his supplement 3 times last week. Yesterday, a tray was sent to his cell directly. Special delivery. Silence filled the room. Forced compliance. Keller leaned forward. Who signed that delivery? Carver slid over a clipboard copy. The signature wasn't the warden's. It was from the Assistant Director of Federal Operations. The same name from Edgewater. Rhodes felt the investigation shifting beneath her feet. This wasn't rogue corruption at facility level. It was centralized. Strategic. Back in her temporary office, Keller uncovered something more alarming. The research companies supplying the compounds, he said, they have a government contract tied to behavioral modification studies. Mostly military applications. Rhodes exhaled slowly. And now prisons. Controlled populations. Limited public oversight. Minimal transparency. Human test subjects without consent. By evening, the story was ready to break. Keller's editor hesitated only briefly before publishing the first exposé. The headlines spread like wildfire across news outlets in the US, then the UK, then Europe. Words like chemical compliance and federal experiment dominated feeds. Within hours, the Department of Justice issued a statement. The Nutritional Compliance Initiative is a lawful dietary optimization program intended to improve inmate wellness and institutional safety. Claims of experimental manipulation are unfounded. Unfounded. At 11:47 p.m., Rhodes' phone vibrated again. A known number. You're destabilizing federal operations, the voice said calmly. Stand down. People are dying, Rhodes shot back. Collateral misinterpretations. Phase 2 reduces violence by 43%. That saves lives. By sedating them without consent? The pause. You're thinking too small, Lieutenant. Prisons are pressure cookers. We've found a solution. Rhodes stared at the dark screen. Solution. The next morning, Darren Pike died. Official cause, cardiac complications. Unofficial cause, compliance paste. Protests erupted outside multiple facilities as Keller's reporting gained traction. Advocacy groups demanded transparency. Families of inmates demanded answers. Inside the Oklahoma complex, tension spiked. Inmates began refusing meals en masse. And then something escalated. 3 kitchen workers disappeared from their scheduled shifts. Security footage from storage room B was wiped. The refrigeration unit containing the gray paste? Empty. Transferred overnight. Rhodes confronted the warden again. Where did the shipments go? I don't know. That's not an acceptable answer. He leaned forward, voice low. You think I control this? Orders come down. We execute them. That's how federal systems work. Rhodes realized something unsettling. Even administrators were pawns. Keller burst into the office, face pale. They've activated Phase 3. Rhodes' stomach tightened. What is Phase 3? Full integration. No separate supplements. The compound gets blended directly into base ingredients. Undetectable. No more cups. No more visible proof. She understood immediately. Once integrated, the chemical trail would vanish into routine meals, bread, sauces, protein blends. Permanent control. A notification pinged on Keller's laptop. An encrypted message from an anonymous source. They're moving the research off-site. Check Maryland Facility Code 7A. Attached were GPS coordinates and a shipment manifest dated 2 days earlier. Rhodes didn't hesitate. We're going. By nightfall, they stood outside an unmarked warehouse in rural Maryland. No signage. Minimal lighting. Security cameras at every corner. A semi-truck idled at the loading dock. Through a partially open bay door, Rhodes saw pallets stacked with identical sealed containers. The same batch numbers from Edgewater, Oklahoma, Indiana. A nationwide operation. Keller photographed everything from a distance, careful not to trigger suspicion. Then headlights cut across the gravel lot. Black SUVs. Rhodes grabbed Keller's arm. We're not alone. Men stepped out, suits, not uniforms. Controlled. One approached them slowly. Lieutenant Rhodes, he said evenly. This facility is federally protected. You're manufacturing chemical suppressants for prisons. He smiled faintly. We're manufacturing stability. Behind him, workers began closing the bay doors. Rhodes stepped forward. 2 inmates are dead. Statistical anomalies. Keller's voice cut in. You're playing with human autonomy. The man's expression hardened. Prisons are not democracies. They're containment systems. And containment requires management. Rhodes felt the weight of the moment. If Phase 3 launched fully, evidence would disappear. Public outrage would fade. The paste would become policy. She pulled out her phone, already streaming live. Then let the public decide, she said. The man's eyes flickered, not fear, but calculation. Sirens wailed in the distance. Keller had tipped off local media. Within minutes, flashing lights surrounded the warehouse. The suits retreated. Federal oversight agents stormed in. Boxes were seized. Documents confiscated. But as Rhodes watched, she noticed something chilling. A second truck had already left the facility. Destination unknown. Inside the warehouse office, investigators found a whiteboard listing distribution schedules. Next to it, 3 words circled in red. Juvenile Pilot Program. Rhodes felt the air leave her lungs. They weren't just targeting federal inmates anymore. They were expanding. As cameras flashed and reporters shouted questions outside, Rhodes stared at the board. This wasn't containment. It was escalation. And somewhere on the highway, that truck was moving Phase 3 to its next destination. The system wasn't collapsing. It was adapting. And the fight was only getting more dangerous. The truck was found at dawn. Abandoned on the shoulder of Interstate 81, just outside a quiet county line in Virginia. Its trailer doors were open, seals cut cleanly, the interior empty except for a single overturned pallet and a clipboard left behind as if someone had walked away in a hurry. Lieutenant Sandra Rhodes stood beside the highway, wind slicing across the asphalt, sirens fading as state police redirected traffic. The rising sun painted the sky in pale orange streaks, deceptively peaceful. They transferred the cargo, Aaron Keller said, scanning the manifest on the recovered clipboard. Mid-route. Rhodes read the destination code printed at the top. JDP4. Juvenile Detention Pilot, Region 4. Her jaw tightened. "Where's JDP4?" she asked. Keller's fingers flew across his laptop. "It's not publicly listed. But the coordinates, they match a privately operated juvenile facility in western Pennsylvania." A cold silence settled between them. The program wasn't just evolving. It was targeting minors. By noon, they were driving through rolling hills toward a low-slung complex surrounded by chain-link fencing and tall floodlights. The sign out front read, "Pine Ridge Youth Rehabilitation Center." Rehabilitation. Rhodes felt the word like a weight. Inside, the atmosphere felt sterile, bright walls, motivational posters, smiling stock photos of teenagers playing basketball. The executive director greeted them with practiced warmth. "We provide second chances," he said. "Education, therapy, structure. And enhanced dietary stabilization?" Rhodes asked evenly. His smile faltered. "We follow federally approved nutrition standards." Keller held up the clipboard recovered from the truck. "This shipment was rerouted here." The director's gaze flickered to the document, then back to Rhodes. "I'll need to verify that." They were escorted to the kitchen. The smell of baking bread hung in the air. Large mixing vats churned quietly. Staff in hairnets moved with mechanical precision. Rhodes scanned the counters. No sealed cups. No visible paste. Phase 3. She approached one of the vats and dipped a gloved finger into the thick sauce mixture. Neutral smell. Slight metallic aftertaste. Her eyes met Keller's. Integrated. They demanded access to medical records. Reluctantly, the director complied. Within minutes, patterns emerged. Lower incident reports. Decreased emotional outbursts. Slowed response times in physical assessments. Elevated markers consistent with sedative compounds. And one line item that made Rhodes' pulse spike. Pilot cohort compliance increase, 61%. The kids didn't know. Parents didn't know. And now the program had moved to a population with even less power. A nurse stepped forward quietly while administrators argued in the hallway. "I didn't sign up for this," she whispered. "They told us it was a nutritional enhancement for mood disorders. But some of the boys have become flat, detached." "Has anyone gotten sick?" Rhodes asked. The nurse hesitated. "One. A 15-year-old. Collapsed during rec time. They transferred him to a hospital under dehydration." Rhodes felt a surge of anger sharpen her focus. Keller's phone buzzed. His editor. The Maryland warehouse story had detonated nationally. Congressional leaders were demanding emergency hearings. Advocacy groups were mobilizing lawsuits. But inside Pine Ridge, the vats kept turning. Rhodes stepped into the director's office. "You're going to shut this program down," she said flatly. "I can't," he replied. "We're contractually bound." "To whom?" He hesitated. Then he said the name. The Assistant Director of Federal Operations. The same architect behind Phase 2. Rhodes leaned forward. "Where is he?" "Resigned yesterday." Of course he had. A scapegoat evaporating before the fire reached him. But Keller had already been digging. "He didn't resign," Keller said quietly, stepping into the office. "He transferred. Private sector. Same research company that developed the compound." The room went still. This was never about correctional safety alone. It was scalability. Rhodes' phone rang again. This time, it was a congressional investigator. "We're issuing subpoenas," the voice said. "We need you in D.C. immediately." As federal agents arrived to secure Pine Ridge's kitchen and seize food samples, Rhodes stepped outside. Reporters had already begun gathering at the gate, cameras aimed at the building behind her. The story was breaking faster than the system could contain it. Within 48 hours, emergency hearings began in Washington. Keller's reporting was projected across screens inside the chamber, images of gray paste, warehouse pallets, medical charts from juvenile detainees. Under oath, senior officials defended the initiative as a misguided attempt at reducing violence. Hit subscribe, smash that like, and comment if you think you could survive the system.